All right, Madam Mayor, we are live on YouTube and recording. You can begin whenever you wish.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Welcome everyone to our regular council meeting on June 18th. Before we begin, just remind everybody in the chambers that the meeting itself is going to be live streamed to YouTube and also available on the YouTube channel. And we may be having participants joining us via Zoom throughout the meeting. Just to be cautious or aware that the cameras that are in front of me have a tendency to just move based on noise. So if you're too rowdy in the chambers, don't be surprised if full camera attention goes on you. So just keep that in mind. And of course, council, please raise your hand, and staff, if you want to speak on a matter, and I'll call on you. So we'll now begin with calling the roll. We have Deputy Mayor Nelson,
Present.
Councilor Watt,
Present.
Councilor Report,
Present.
Councilor Johnston,
Present.
of course myself, Mayor Heather Watson, and a very full staff bench today. We have our acting CEO and clerk, Martina Chait-Hartwig, good afternoon. Our legislative services assistant, Anita Mundahar, our interim treasurer, Paul Kramer,
Good.
our CDO, Don Hellman,
Present.
our planner, I'm gonna get a breath, our planner, Christina Coulter, and a new face here in the chambers, our building and planning summer student, Mandaprita Muralidar.
It's Muralidar.
Muralidar. I said this 3 times earlier. So welcome. We have our fire chief, Chuck Johnson, and our media Welcome everyone. With quorum council in attendance, I will call the meeting to order, beginning with our land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the lands which are part of the 1818 Treaty 20 and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe bands of Great Ojibwe Nation. We offer our gratitude to the Ojibwe for their care and knowledge of the lands on which we work, live, and enjoy. May we honor and respect their teachings and treaty obligations as we grow together. And we'll just pause for a moment of silent reflection, please. Okay. Of course, the agenda has been distributed prior to the meeting. I haven't received any disclosure of pecuniary interest, so I'll call to see if there is any. Nothing. Seeing that, then just an adoption for the agenda this afternoon. Councilor Report, Councilor Watt. Yes. 8.3, thank you. 8.3 delegation from Chris Maffei. That has will not be happening. The individual has provided notice that he's unable to attend. Thank you for that, Councilor Watt. You're moving the rest of the agenda, and seconded by Councilor Report. I think you're already doing so. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. We have item number 6, the adoption of the minutes and business arising from the minutes for the special council meetings, May 20th, 29th, June 4th, and 5th, and our regular council on June 4th. Motion to receive and adopt those. Second by Nelson, second by Councilor Report. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you. We have 4 items on consent, including the county council meeting minutes, the Douro-Dummer locals report regarding septic reinspection program that was presented to council on May 21st, County Bureau 2023 waste diversion report, and Bureau Forth's economic development official statement regarding their dissolution. So if there's an item that anyone in council would like to vote for discussion, let me know. Otherwise, just one motion to receive and approve those items on consent. Councilor Report, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson. All in favor?
Please go with the question.
Certainly.
The one on there, 7.2. It was going back to the staff to look into that. Any idea when we might be looking at it again?
On the septic reinspection program? Mr. Hillman?
3, Madam Mayor. We haven't, sorry. Tonight, we're bringing forward an amendment to the bylaw just to capture the suspension of it. And then we'll be conducting the research on how some options that we have to re-implement it if council wishes to. I don't have a timeline as of yet on when we'd be able to bring that back. It'll depend on a bit of the length of research that we end up having to do.
So, to the chair, as of now, it's on hold till the end of the year. Yes, say that, till the end of the year.
Correct, the motion we put in place was to pause the program for this year. Any other questions on those items on consent? Seeing nothing, the motion is already passed, so we're good to go there. Under delegations, petitions, presentations, or public meetings, we've got a number of items, starting with the public meeting, zoning bylaw amendment. And we are just looking to move to open public meeting. Councilor Ward, second by Councilor Johnston, all in favor? That motion carries, and I will hand it over to our wonderful folks in planning. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Watson, members of council, staff, and the public. This is a public meeting for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, file number R0924. Council has before them report planning 2024-17 with the recommendation that the planning 2024-17 report dated June 18, 2024 regarding zoning bylaw amendment file R0924 be received, and that the council receive all comments related to zoning bylaw amendment file R0924, and that the bylaw to enact the amendment be passed at the appropriate time in the meeting. Township staff have initiated a housekeeping amendment to the comprehensive zoning bylaw. The amendment applies to two properties which are municipally known as 909 3rd Line and 904 2nd Line. An administrative error was discovered for the zoning on the subject properties. The roll number, legal description, and text for Special District 183 and Special District 184 in the consolidated zoning bylaw apply to different properties which were rezoned through bylaw number 2010-17 and bylaw number 2010-44 respectively. Staff are proposing to rezone the Special District 183 and Special District 184 zone portions of the subject properties to Special District 259 and Special District 260 respectively, and to include the text of bylaw number 2008-55, but change the agricultural zoning reference to the rural zone reference, since the current comprehensive zoning bylaw no longer contains an agricultural zone. Township staff contacted the owners of each property prior to initiating the amendment. The owners were advised of the omission, the proposed amendment, and rezoning process. Both owners confirmed they were supportive of staff's proposed approach. Notice of the public meeting was given on May 28, 2024 by ordinary mail and email to all prescribed public bodies and to every person and public body that has provided a written request for notice. Notice of the public meeting was posted on the subject properties along the Douro-3rd Line and Douro-2nd Line, and on the Township website. The giving of notice complies with the applicable regulation of the Planning Act. As of the writing of this report, no comments have been received from the members of the public. Comments were received from the following agencies. Enbridge Gas Inc. has indicated that they have no objections to the application. Bell Canada does not generally comment on zoning bylaw amendments. Bell Canada will generally comment on recirculation where the change modifies the proposed residential dwelling unit count and or non-residential gross floor area in a draft plan of subdivision, draft plan of condominium, and or site plan control application. Autonomic Region Conservation Authority. Autonomic conservation mapping indicates that the proposed development on the severed lands is not located within a known hazard. Therefore, it is the opinion of Autonomic conservation staff that the application remains consistent with section 3.1 of the provincial policy statement. The proposed development does not create new or aggravate existing hazards. Autonomic conservation mapping indicates that the lands are partially subject to Ontario Regulation 41/24, Autonomic Conservation's prohibited activities, exemptions, and permits regulation, due to the presence of water courses, associated flooding hazards, and wetlands on the two subject properties. The rezoning of the two special district zones does not require a permit from this agency. The subject property is not located within a vulnerable area that is subject to trend source correction plan policies. Comments from the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board were received after the writing of this report. The school board has no objection to the application. Copies of these agency comments are attached to this report. The application was circulated to senior staff on May 24, 2024, and there were no concerns identified. As proposed, the draft bylaw is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the growth plan and the official plan. With that, I will turn it back to you, Mayor Watson, for any questions from the public and council.
Thank you very much. So at this point, we'll just ask if there's anybody present who would like to comment on the application. Madam Clerk, is there anybody on the Zoom? There is not. Thank you very much. Council, any questions of staff? Anything else?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, just looking at the map, so will this allow the owners of that property to be able to, build outside? If I look at the lines on the map, they would be able to build in that zone now?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's correct. So currently, the properties in the special district, the 134 and 135, I think they were, it was referencing it back to an island residential zone, which wouldn't allow them to have a second dwelling unit, for example, if they wanted that. So by placing them into the revised special district zones, they can have the permitted uses of the rural zone, which is the zone that they would naturally be in if they hadn't referenced to different properties in the zoning bylaw. So outside of the environmental conservation and environmental conservation provincially significant wetland, it's already on the properties and we're not changing that. Any area outside of that would allow for permits. Both properties are already developed.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? No, seeing nothing at all, just a motion then to close the public meeting, please. Secretary Nelson, seconded by Councilor Johnston, all in favor? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Seeing we don't have anybody here for this, so we'll just do the bylaw at the tail end of the meeting. Moving along to item 8.2, we have a presentation from Watson and Associates Economics Limited. Yes.
We just need a motion to receive all of the items.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry. Yeah, a motion to receive the report and all the comments. Councilor Watson, seconded by Councilor Report, all in favor? That motion carries. Now on to the presentation from Watson and Associates Economic Limited on our development charges project update. And we have Mr. Darrell Abs here. Sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and pleasure to be here in person in front of yourself and council. So this evening, I have a brief presentation on the development charge background study process that we've been undertaking with staff to update your development charges by law. Next slide, please. And next slide. So just a bit about myself. My name is Darrell Abs. I'm a managing partner with Watson and Associates Economics Limited. We use a shorter name for our company. I hate saying that one every single time. Most people refer to us as Watson. I've been working with Watson almost 10 years now, and I've undertaken over 75 of these development charge background studies. So with respect to the study process that we've undertaken with the township, we started at the end of last year, really at the beginning of this year, and worked with staff, and I thank staff for their hard work assisting us in putting the information together. We released the background study, which sets out all of the detailed calculations and policies and legislative materials back on June move forward. And that is a requirement of the legislation that we do put that on the website available for public review. We're having this meeting now to present the information and so the council can ask any questions. We're going to advertise for the public meeting in July and have that formal public meeting that's required under the Development Charges Act. We'll have that on August 6th. Council can then consider the bylaw on August 6th after that public meeting has closed in advance of the expiry date of the bylaw, which is August. Next slide, please. And next. So development charges are a revenue tool that municipalities use to recover the capital costs associated with new development. And so with new development, we might have capital costs. Perhaps we have to, let's say, pave a shoulder, widen the road, extend the sidewalk. So development charges are for recovery of those capital costs associated with that new development. Now, this is in addition to what a developer might normally construct as part of their subdivision. So within a subdivision, if you have a number of homes, they're going to build the internal roads, the sidewalks, if there are any of those internal works. The developer would build those. This is for infrastructure that's in addition to that. Development charges are typically paid at the time of building permit issuance. There are some nuances with the legislation that were recently implemented, but generally most developments would pay at the time of building permit. And we are guided by the Development Charges Act, provincial legislation, which sets out how we can undertake these calculations and what policies and procedures we have to follow. Next slide, please. So this triangle really just shows the money has to come from somewhere. And so at the top, we have the need to service these new users, these new people, these new businesses, new developments, and we have to spend money to service those new developments. So to the extent that that infrastructure is related to the new growth, we can use development charges to recover those costs and pay for that infrastructure. Otherwise, if we're not using development charges, then the money has to come from somewhere. It would come from your existing reserves or property taxes. Next slide, please. So in a perfect world, the kind of municipal financial planning framework we'll start with the official plan, and that official plan will guide the policies and how you're going to grow and develop. And then from there, once you know where you're going to grow and how you're going to develop, you can undertake master plans, which will identify the specific capital needs required for that development. From there, then development charges can take the growth, we can take the capital needs required for that growth, and we can undertake our development charge calculation. Now, I say in a perfect world because the timing of these things don't always align. And so if there's a need to, let's say, undertake a master plan, but it's not going to occur for a few years, we can still undertake the development charge calculation. We just need to provide some estimates of what those capital costs might be, and then you can update in the future when you undertake those plans. Next slide, please. So very simply, what we do is we take those costs associated with the new development, divide it by the new development, and what we're going to get is a development charge per unit for residential growth and development charge per square foot of floor area for non-residential growth. Next slide, please. And so the Development Charges Act really has something like 70 clauses, and there's years of OLT, OMB cases which really help guide how we undertake these calculations. But very simply, what we do is we take the amount, type, and location of growth and development. So where are we going to grow and by how much? And what are the servicing needs required to accommodate that growth? Once we know what those servicing needs are, let's say they're park space, then we need to identify the specific capital costs that meet that need, so provide the park space to accommodate the growth. And so in the background study that is on the website in chapter 5, what we have is a listing of all the different projects that we've identified, and I'll show you a summary a little bit later in the presentation. But we take those total capital costs, and then we need to make a series of deductions, because not all of it is related to that new development. So if we go back to that triangle, we can't recover it all from development charges. If we're going to receive any grants or subsidies from, let's say, the province, we need to deduct that from our calculations. We also need to take into account any benefit to the existing community. So if we're going to replace something and make it bigger, then we need to account for the replacement of what we already have as a deduction there. We also have to take this historical service level calculation. I'll show you a summary of that analysis. And we also have to take into account any balances in the development charge reserve fund that you might have. From there, we have our net costs associated with new development. And we have to allocate those costs between residential and non-residential benefit and divide it by the growth in each of those categories to come up with the calculation of the charge. Next slide, please. And I'll show you in a little bit what those calculated charges are relative to your current charges. So when we're looking at the capital needs, what can we include in the development charge background study and bylaw? The Development Charges Act sets out 19 services. What we've highlighted here in the blue is really what we've included, consistent with your current bylaw. So services related to a highway, which is really roads and public works, fire, library, and parks and recreation services. Next slide, please. So as part of the requirements of the legislation, we have to do a service standard calculation. And these calculations are set out in Appendix B of the background study. And what it says is we have to take a look at the average level of service we've been providing over the last 15 years. And we can't exceed that level of service. And so we have to look at it on two different measures, quality and quantity, and do a calculation to make sure we're not exceeding that. Next slide, please. And I apologize, this is rather small on the screen here, but what we wanted to show really is the last two columns or three columns. And so the third to last column here shows the maximum amount we would be allowed to include in a development charge calculation. And so for services related to a highway, the total is about $8.5 million. What we've actually included in the calculation is only about 2.6. For fire services, it's about $750,000. We've included $745,000. For parks and recreation services, it's actually about $3.6 million, but we've only included just under $900,000 there. And then for library services, it's about $100,000. We've included about $85,000. We haven't maximized based on that level of service calculation. So we could include more and have higher charges, but just based on the capital needs that we're looking at, based on the growth we're looking at, we've actually included a little bit less than that. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the capital cost, what we can include is we can include the cost of land if we need to purchase land to build a facility, for example, except parkland. I'll mention that in a second. We can improve the land, so we need to landscape the land, add fencing, signage, etc. to parks, for example. We can put in the cost of building new facilities or leasing facilities. Equipment and rolling stock really relates to your large, let's say mowers and large equipment like that, and let's say pickup trucks and such for public works. You can include a capital component of a lease, and as well circulation materials for libraries. Now, the second to last bullet, studies, which includes the development charge background study, can be included now. I'll show you there was some flip-flopping with the province where they excluded it, added it back in. So the calculations we have do not include that right now, but it is now an eligible cost as of June 6th. So it is. And then lastly, if you had to debt finance any of the infrastructure, you can include the interest as well, but we did not include any debt financing assumptions. Next slide, please. So there are some limitations on what we can include, parkland being one of them. Parkland is provided through parkland dedication. When you develop, let's say, a subdivision, you're required through the Planning Act to provide the actual land for parks or cash instead of the land. And so because of that, we cannot include it in development charge. Vehicles and equipment have to be substantial equipment. We can't put everything in there, hammers and nails and things like that. They have to be substantial items, and they have to have an average life of at least 7 years. And then lastly, computer equipment is excluded in the legislation, but I think we can all appreciate when the legislation was created, which was in 1989 and then 1997, computers played a far different role in our lives than they do now. And so essentially, as long as the computers are integral to providing the service, we can include it. But generally, things like the laptops in front of everyone here, those would not be eligible for inclusion. Next slide, please. So to summarize the total cost was included by the different services, we set up this table here. And in the background study in chapter 5, we show each and every specific project separately by the different services. But what we're looking at is a total of about $13.5 million of capital needs. And this is from the period of 2024 to 2051. So quite a long time. This is to align with the official plan timeline. What we have to do is make a deduction for post-period benefits. This is something that would be benefiting the growth past 2051. So that's a deduction of about 1.36 million. And then we also have to make a deduction for the benefit to existing development. So you can see 7.79 million we have to deduct because that's going to be considered as a replacement or benefiting what was there already. So of that 13.5 million that we identified, we're only including about 4.3 in the actual calculations. So under 1/3 of the overall cost. Next slide, please. And so when we're looking at the growth to 2051, and this aligns with the official plan forecast, looking at about 409 people, about 366.6 thousand square feet of non-residential floor space. Next page, please. And so I'm not going to go through all of the specific changes to the legislation because the problem has been busy over the last 5 years. But development charges have been around since the 1950s. They were called lot levies. They were imposed under the Planning Act. The first formal legislation was in '89, and then they revised that in 1997. And so since '97, there was one change in 2016, and then a number of changes since 2019. And all of these changes have been incorporated into the policies into the background. Next slide, please. So just to highlight some of the important ones for consideration that were changed since the previous background study was prepared. Certain types of developments get to pay in installment payments. So rental housing and institutional development, they get to pay in 6 equal annual installments over 5 years. As well, if you're proceeding through development application through site plan or zoning bylaw amendment, your development charge rate is frozen when you submit your application. That way it provides some clarity on what the rates are going to be as you proceed through that process. Okay, there's some rules around that, some time restrictions on how long that rate freeze applies, but that was set out in Bill 108. And there's some other minor changes. There's exemption for universities and some reporting requirements. The big changes are the last 3 bullets there. Bill 23, which most people have heard of Bill 23. It did provide for a number of restrictions, reductions, exemptions from development charges. And then what we saw was the most recent legislative change, which came out in April, blocked back some of those changes. So I'll try my best to explain it so that it's not too confusing, but some of them were implemented and then taken away. So we'll go through. Next slide, please. So Bill 23 brought in some exemptions, nonprofit housing that were exempt from development charges, additional residential units, you might hear them referred to as ARUs or ADUs. Essentially, if you have a single detached, semi-detached, or a row house, you can put up to 2 apartments in those houses, and you don't have to pay development charges on those additional apartments. Okay, and that could be one in the house and one on a garage, for example. And then they brought in this exemption for affordable rental units and affordable home units. We'll talk about that in the next slide. That is now in force as of June 1st. And then they've also brought in this exemption for attainable units, but they haven't defined what those are. Next slide, please. So this is the first kind of, I'll say flip-flop, change. So starting in Bill 23, they provided a definition for what's affordable. Then they heard from municipalities that that didn't really make sense, it's tied to income, and then they were applying that. So essentially what they do is they take a look at the average income in the municipality, and they use the 60th percentile. And then they want to make sure that you're spending no more than 30% of that income on either rent or the full purchase price, so your mortgage and all those costs. So as long as we're not spending more than 30%, then those units will be deemed affordable. So to make that a bit easier for municipalities, what they've done is they've created a bulletin, essentially you can go on that website and you can take a look at what that value is in your municipality. Unfortunately, I was trying to look it up while I was sitting here in the website's down, but generally they have for each of the different types of units, what the affordable price is. So for example, maybe single detached home, it might say the affordable price in your municipality is $350,000. And so if they agree to sell a home at that price or lower, they will be exempt from development charges. Now, generally what we're hearing from municipalities and developers alike is no one's really going to use this. The incomes and the affordable price is generally a lot lower than the market, so it probably will not have a large impact. Next slide, please. There's a discount for rental housing based on the number of bedrooms. And then I did mention, this is one of the changes that they made, that they removed studies as being eligible for development charges, which is why we didn't include growth-related studies in the calculations because they were removed. But just recently, as of June 6th, they've added studies back in. So we can do an amendment after, we could do an amendment as part of this as well to include recovery of studies. If the development charge background study itself could be funded through development charges, so that is an option. We had to extend our historical level of service calculations. Then they also brought in this mandatory phase-in of the charge. We'll go through all the details because they took that out. So that's no longer in effect. So that mandatory phase-in won't be included in your bylaw. There are some other administrative matters. Generally, the most important one there is that the development charge bylaw now has like 10 years instead of 5, so you can let it go for it. Next slide, please. And this slide really is just Bill 185, the most recent bill, which provided the removal of the phase-in, putting studies back in, and some other changes. Next slide, please. Okay, so with respect to your current development charge rates, you charge about $6,736 for a single detached unit, and on the non-residential side, that is 20 cents per square foot. Although that the charges for all of the different residential types, so other multiples being townhomes, and then we have apartment rates, all of those rates are the same. Generally, what we see is varied rates for those different types of units, and so the calculated charges will have different rates there. Next slide, please. So in your bylaw, there's some mandatory exemptions that we're going to have to include. And so all of those ones in the orange are the ones I just talked about that were added because it's Bill 23. And then as well, we also have upper tier, lower tier government. So we're going to charge the county if they build a facility and they won't charge you. And similarly for the school boards. Industrial buildings can expand up to 50% of their existing floor space. They don't have to pay a development charge. And then as well, universities. Next slide, please. So with respect to discretionary exemptions, you can reduce the charge in whole or in part for different classes or categories of development. You can phase in the charge over time. And some of the more common discretionary exemptions that put at the bottom, being place of worship and bona fide farms are probably the two most common. And then some municipalities exempt industrial and some others. Just noting that if you exempt a development from development charges, and then you get one of these types of developments coming forward, then the municipality has to then fund that amount into the reserve fund. Okay. Lastly, there's a redevelopment credit we apply, so we give people credit for what's there. They have a single detached home, not get them to the town, they get a credit for that. Next slide, please. Now, in the background study, I won't go through this in very much detail, but Appendix E to the background study sets up this local service policy for the developers. Essentially what it says is what's the developer's responsibility versus what goes into the development charge calculation. Okay, so, for example, parks and recreation, if they're going to dedicate the park land, what standard does it have to be dedicated at? And then anything else like play facilities, et cetera, we would fund with development charge. Next slide, please. And next slide. So with respect to the calculated rates, and I'll show a comparison on the next slide. What we're looking at is for single detached homes at $6,656 per unit. And you can see those other different categories, we have varied charges for those different units. That's because when we do the development charge calculation, we base it on the number of people we're assuming. And so each of these different types of units have less people in those homes generally. And so we have some lower charges for those different types of residential units. Mostly you're going to be building single family homes. So I think predominantly 90% or more would be single family homes. You may get some other types of developments, but generally it's singles. And then for the non-residential charges, we're looking at $4.87 per square foot. Next slide, please. So you'll see actually the charge is going down for residential development a little bit. And what we've done this time, and it's really a different methodology than what was undertaken under the last background study process. Under the last background study process, kind of took all of your capital program and took a portion of that and applied that to growth. However, just based on our experience and going through tribunal cases, et cetera, and of the 75 studies I've undertaken and more than our firm's undertaken, we've taken an approach of looking at the specific projects that would accommodate those additional units and non-residential floor space we've identified. So you'll see the roads charge went down, you'll see the park and recreation charge went up, but overall the charge has gone down almost $100. Next slide, please. Now for the non-residential charges, again, it's a different methodology that was utilized last time. Based on the experience we have and the approach to allocating the benefit between residential and non-residential growth, what we have is services related to highway, fire, services, looking at the ratio of anticipated population and employment. And they're relatively close, and so we have almost a 50-50 split on those costs. So, so that is what is driving that higher rate for that non-residential charge. Next slide, please. And next slide. So last couple of slides, just to show you where you are relative to some of the other municipalities and counties. So you'll see the green arrow is the current charges and the purple arrow is calculated, really on a relative position, not changing where you are relative to your neighboring municipalities. Next slide, please. For the commercial charges, you'll see the updated approach will bring you up just under Asheville Norwood and above Autonomy South Pond. Next slide, please. And with respect to industrial development charges, you'll see that orange bar is gone now. That was the county's charge. They don't charge the industrial development charges. But you'll see the relative position again going up to just below Asheville Norwood and just above Trent Lakes there. Next slide, please. So with respect to next steps, and I think as part of this, we're happy to receive any feedback from the public before the public meeting, but the public meeting will be anticipated for August 6th. And then after that public meeting is closed, later that evening, council will consider the bylaw. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that thorough presentation. Just in full transparency, I feel like Watson's a very common name, but I should say no relationship to Watson and Associates, your principal or the company, just to clear that out there. Any other comments, Mr. Kerr? Did you want to pop in on something on this before council open up to council?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Daryl, for the presentation. It was, I think the process went pretty well, and I'm happy with the outcome in terms of the defensibility of the study and the product in front of you compared to the last study. I think the approach is much more reasonable in terms of the capital costs that are being recovered for. I did want to just make one quick note. You mentioned that we didn't include studies, but I think we were anticipating the legislation because it had been released, so we did include the studies in the charge.
Yeah, sorry, I meant as a separate category.
Okay, Okay, council, over to you. Any questions, comments? What?
To you, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's a lot to absorb, that's for sure, but at least we have the from us here, so we can go back over as necessary. So just one quick question. Parks and Recreation Services under the service / process roads. The current 128 calculated is 2023. That's a big jump. Can you give it a little overview of what drove that jump? Please.
For sure, so through the mayor, so like I said, at the last study, more so took a look at the total capital budget you had, and then apportioned a small amount of that to growth and then included it. But what we're looking at this time is identifying specific projects. So we do have some funds in there for parkland development, so development of some additional parkland, and basically taking a look at your, looking at a typical standard of how many acres or hectares of parkland per 1,000 people you have, and then applying that to the new 400 new people to come up with an amount of parkland that you would need to maintain that standard. As well, what we've done is we've taken a look at some additional amenities, because if we're gonna have new park space, you're gonna need some playgrounds and amenities on that space. There's also parking expansion, so for the North Park parking expansion, and then as well the Legion Ball Diamond parking expansion, we've identified those projects. And then lastly, a mower as well. So having all of those projects set out based on the growth, that's
Any other questions from the council?
Well,
Councillor Johnston?
through the chair. Now, again, this has got nothing to do with parkland, from the subdivision. So this doesn't include that. But what we want to charge, or give us new money instead of parkland.
So, through the mayor, that's correct. That if you're going to charge, so through parkland dedication, they're gonna give you either land. If they're not gonna give you the land, they'll give you the cash value of the land. That would be completely separate from this. Typically either through your policies or maybe your official plan policies or through a parkland dedication bylaw. So that would be separate from this.
Councillor Johnston, follow? Looks like you're pondering that for now.
No, I was involved in one of these before, but this is so maybe, I'm really confused on how we're doing this now. People we had before doing it, now we were able to, collect money and put it towards every division, like for fire or parks or whatever. So is there going to be a calculation showing what percent go to all these different items, like different parts of that?
So, through the mayor, yeah, so, I know what you're referring to, it takes the total charge and then shows the specific percentage. So rather than showing the percentage, what we've done is we've shown the actual dollar amount. So of the $6,656 for a single detached home, $3,295 of that would go to roads. $932 of that would go to fire services, and they would each go into their own separate development charges reserve fund to build up that reserve fund for those projects. But we can add a schedule into the public meeting presentation slide, which takes the total and just shows the percentage if you'd like.
Deputy Mayor Nelson?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks a lot for your presentation. My question is, just when we look at comparators of the other municipalities, whereabouts do they sit as far as, have they updated theirs or not? Yeah, that might be something for I just look at for a future meeting with the public, maybe a comparator of who has already updated theirs and who hasn't. That's my question.
So, through the mayor, what we could do for the public meeting is include the year of their last update, just so that it's clear when they updated. I know I've worked with Kavanaugh and it's been a few years since they've updated theirs. Economy South Monahan as well, in a few years. So, I can go in and identify what the years are in which that they undertook their study.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, seeing nothing else then at this point, I think we just need a motion to receive the presentation and the report. Councillor Report, and seconded by Councillor Watt. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time and presentation today.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 8.4, we have a delegation from Ms. Mary Young. On the flow of water onto property. And I believe there might be a screen or something, a slide that you want to put up, or?
Okay, can I put that one out on the screen, the school area in general?
And while everybody gets situated, just a reminder, of course, our delegations have 10 minutes, so once you begin, I'll start the
Is
timer.
that as much as it's on?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's better. Okay, I thought I would just start with a brief description of the area. So you have Television Road here, you have a drumlin that begins here, the Ronco home is on top of that. You have another drumlin here, which our farmhouse is. Essentially in between, you have low-lying areas, houses, front Television Roads, the north end of Television Road. In 2004, the trust plan for what this was rezoned industrial commercial was the north portion. The south portion has a small wetland that's unrecognized. Orca has a 350-meter buffer around it. It has soils that absorb poorly. There's a central channel that was dug by a previous owner that carries water to the ditch here to exit to Television Road and the canal, which is at the tip. The lowest point in this wetland is our pond that's beside the farmhouse. 1950s Television Road was raised to the west west of the pond without a culvert. So it now can be a dam if you get heavy rainfall. Previously, water would go down this drum and then join with Curtis Creek at the bottom of it. I think that's kind of your way, I don't see it. So if you get, okay, in 2003, the trust plan purchased this property and they applied to rezone it from rural residential to industrial commercial. Before the zoning was approved, and before site plan was in place with any stormwater measures to deal with changes, they raised this lane. This is all fairly low lying. They raised this lane and they filled in the portion to the north of it. Approximately 1,500 loads of fill came in. In 2004, we had that heavy rainfall. So my pond, which is the lowest point in the wetland, backed up to the north, which is lower, going up a drumlin to the south. It hit this lane, which was raised, and it flooded the property next door, backed up. So for residents, this flood occurred largely because changes were made to the landscape without stormwater analysis to deal with the changes. Previously, the water would have flowed over the lane into the low-lying area. Okay, now in 2014, the building center expanded on Park Hill, and they displayed all the fill that was displaced was brought up and put in this south portion. It was put in the northeast quarter. So residents said, this is going to cause trouble. You are once again removing storage space for water in a storm event, and if we get another one, more homes will flood. My brother and I said that this low-lying area that comes off these two drumlins in our fields, we said that this berm, or this 3,000 loads of fill approximately runs adjacent to about 350, 400 feet of our property line. It's about 150 feet wide, and it's about 25 feet high. We said that this is going to back this runoff water up in our fields, and it's going to increase the ponding there. I think I'll go to the next. In 2021, this is the part that I have reported on all of this before. In 2021, maybe I'll just show you the picture.
Which one is it here?
It's okay. I want to go back to that maybe. 2021. Maybe I'll go, there was an OMB hearing when this was rezoned. And it was rezoned to, the north portion was, where the land is, became, industrial commercial. The south, all the experts testified, not all, but most, testified at the, OMB hearing, including the chair, considered the south to be a sensitive area because of the wetland, and all said that no development should occur without analysis. I'll just quote the chair. The chair says the OMB chair stated the south portion will need extensive study prior to any official plan or zoning amendments. So we had 3,000 loads of fill put in with no stormwater analysis at all. Now, in 2021, can you bring these, maybe I'll just show you the picture. 2021, this is the top of the berm, the top of the fill. The trust plant leveled this, and they packed it, and they covered it with crushed stone. It would appear the plan was to convert it to exterior storage without applying for a zoning amendment, bylaw amendment. They also at that time banked the west side of the berm. The water and snow melt cannot get to that central channel that carries water to the exit ditch. They also banked the south side of the berm, which is this. You want to put that picture up? They banked the south side of it here, so that water cannot get to the wetland. So in fact, all snow melt and all water is now going east into our fields. And my brother and I feel that the wet area has really increased. And I didn't have pictures of this when Martina picked up the package. But these are pictures of our fields that I recently took. So this is on the drum, and the farmhouse is on looking north. And this is this wet triangle. If you go back to the first picture, the first diagram I put up. No, this one. Yeah. You're looking at this triangle, right, from the drum, and you look at these pictures. So this area, we believe, is triple to quadruple. It's even in the field that's north of this fence line. That's what you're looking at here. And then this is south of the fence line, just going across. This is beside the west fence line that runs adjacent to the trust plant. These pictures are what the top of the mound looks today. So there's the entrance. This is looking south, so you can still see the banking. And this is looking west. You can still see the banking. It's vegetated now. So I want questions answered, because I received answers in 2014, the council essentially gave me their decision, which was that they could put it under site plan. They could limit the amount of fill you could bring in without stormwater measures, but they weren't going to. That was what we suggested. Orca essentially said that they don't deal with flooding. They don't deal with storage space as it relates for water, as it relates to flooding. They don't deal with runoff, and they therefore would not be interested in this runoff that may well be backing up in our fields. So the questions that I still have not been answered, and frankly, I don't really know who's supposed to answer them. I have said, does the dumping of 3,000 loads of fill without stormwater measures to deal with the changes to the landscape contravene the directive set forth at the OMB ruling? Residents think it does. Does the berm remove the berm, I call it, the mound of berm, does the berm remove the storage space for water in flood conditions? I don't think we know, because there's been no analysis, there's been no stormwater analysis. Can the berm be converted to an area for exterior storage of materials without any stormwater analysis or zoning bylaw, given that this would involve a change in the land use? Is this mound of earth interfering with the flow of water into the wetland, thereby decreasing the water in it and increasing the ponding in our field? Is the banking of the berm, there's been no stormwater analysis, so I don't think we know the answer to that. And I don't know who's supposed to tell us. Orca says it's not them. I would have thought it would be. Is the banking of the berm to the west and the south, the pictures I showed you, which directs water onto another's property, is that legal? And this question, I might have put it another way. I say, do Township Council and ORCA have an obligation to protect residents from actions which are detrimental to them? Rather, I think I would ask, if you have a property owner who doesn't follow procedures, who pushes rules to the limits and at times breaks them, who's the enforcement body? Like, rules aren't any good if you don't have an enforcement body. So my letter ends with these questions being answered. I don't know who's supposed to answer them. Who is the enforcement body? Can that be answered here?
I don't know if we can answer that on a delegation, Ms. Young, like that's not typically how we would handle that. Council could ask staff to look into that.
Here.
Not from a delegation standpoint, that's not really the forum for that. And I just want to note you're at your 10-minute mark as well.
Okay, anyway, I just finished we met with Brian Fawcett during COVID. We had an hour of conversation and telephone, my brother and I. We never heard anything back. So, I would like my questions answered and some response. Okay, thank you for hearing me. And thank you, Martina, for picking up the package and advocating.
Thank you for your delegation. Council, questions?
Yeah, to the chair. I guess my question is right off the bat. Was there any engineering study that's all done before they put that, you say 2,000 loads of?
Well, approximately 3,000 loads of fill.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Because that doesn't sound right. If people wanted to move fill, and I don't know if you can help me on this one, but if they wanted to move fill, that much fill and make a berm, is there not some kind of regulation that know what you're doing and why you're doing it, and who can you affect? If you can answer that, not.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councilor Johnson, I wouldn't want to speak specifically to the property just without having reviewed the roll file or property file, but we do have a bylaw in place for placement of fill and clearing and draining of land. And there are bylaw provisions for that. Ministry of Environment does look after fill being brought in from off-site. It's not something that is dealt with in-house. It's another governing agency on that. And I don't know, and because I didn't review the file specifically, I'm just would hate to speak to something specific to that property.
Well, just a follow-up question.
I didn't hear that answer. I heard last. What exactly did you say?
Sorry. It started with that. I wouldn't want to speak specifically to the property that you're referencing because I haven't reviewed the property file to know what's happened through the OMB, what's happened with zoning. we have, so fill that's placed that's brought in from offsite is regulated through the Ministry of Environment or MECD now. And it's something that's dealt with outside of our jurisdiction, and it's to regulate, again, offsite fill being brought into another property. There are some bylaws within our municipality that speak to, filling and draining of land. Again, depending on what was done, would be whether the bylaw covers that or not. So it doesn't prohibit it, it just speaks to some of the regulations or the rules that would have to be followed.
I think I was told at the time that you had no rule limiting the amount of fill that could come in. And because we said there should be, that you should limit the amount that can come in before you have to have analysis. But it's my understanding that there wasn't, you didn't have any rules, so.
Yeah,
Sorry.
So Councilor Johnson, any other questions?
I got one more question. When they, through the chair, when they, put that fill, did they take that off the property, like on the existing, for more parking or whatever? Did they take that and remove it, or they brought it inside?
It came in from the building center. They expanded at the building center, and the fill that was displaced, they transported to the north, to the trust map site, right?
Just want to understand.
Any other questions or comments from council on the delegation? Councilor Watt?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mary, for your presentation. And there is certainly questions that staff can look into and answer. It's if we have a copy of your questions, or if we can leave a copy of your questions, we can possibly ask our building department and our planning department to look it over past history and present history and see where we go from there and get you some answers. So that
I
would be.
included a timeline of activities that have occurred on this property.
Right.
Most of them are in the past 20 years.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we ask our staff to get into this for Mary and with the questions that she has and see what we can answer and see where it goes from there.
Okay, that's a motion seconded by Councilor Verboort. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, so,
To receive the delegation.
yep, thank you very much. Councilor Johnston, seconded by Councilor Verboort. All in favor? And that carries. Thanks for keeping me on my toes. On to item 9, our public comment period. We didn't receive any requests for speakers, so we are on to item number 10, the report and capital project status, 10.1 that is. Any questions or items to discuss on that report? And if not, just a motion to receive.
Motion to receive.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. All in favor? That motion carries. Item 10.2, the fire station 2 paving, and that's over to our fire chief. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. As council is aware, we have been repurposing an old building to be new fire station 2 in Durham. Part of this project was the rehabilitation of the parking lot and around the building. This is a 2-year project. Last year, we replaced the inadequate base and topped with gravel. This year was the second phase. Part of the 2024 capital budget was included in the Hero County paving tender. The amount budgeted was $20,000, and the cost through the county tender winner came in at $33,795 for our project. So our recommendation is that Fire Chief 2024-06 report dated June 18, 2024 regarding Fire Station 2 paving be received, and that council directs staff to offer the county paving tender to the being over budget and to negotiate with the lowest submission of our for our project. And furthermore, to approve this project with an offset limit of $26,000 plus applicable taxes, and that the cost overage to be funded from the cost savings that Public Works received through their service treatment tender. I can answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Council?
Yeah, I got to the chair. I got a question to ask you, Chuck. How much of that area are you doing? Like, I know the rate, just where you, the gravel.
Yeah, so through the mayor, there's, the area that's gravel now would be paved, so we, to get the sloping, we were hoping not to have to do near where we put the septic system in, the pumping station. But because of the grade, we have to, that has to be included, so that's been scraped off to get the grade properly. And then added a little bit where the old fuel tanks were that we took away. So we cleaned that up to provide parking for the firefighters to get into the building. So that's that shape, that was submitted.
I figured it must be more than just what we, in front there, we did just for that.
Yeah, the challenge is trying to get the grades, to get the water to move out, because the way that it was prior to last year, we had several inches of standing water where you have to try to get into the building, so we're trying to alleviate that.
Well, then any other questions, I'm gonna make a motion that we, follow the recommendation.
Okay, I'll come back to you in a moment for that motion. Any other questions from council? All right, so we've got a motion from Councillor Johnston, seconded by Councillor Bourgeois. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. On to 10.3 building bylaw amendment to Appendix A, Building Department 2024-08. Over to you, Mr. Hellman.
Thank you very much. Council, you have before you Building Department Report 2024-08 and a draft of the amended Appendix A of the Building Bylaw 2024-31. This amendment is being brought forward in order to accurately reflect council's decision during the regular council meeting on June 4th, 2024, to suspend the sewage system maintenance inspection program for the 2024 year. The changes to Appendix A are highlighted in yellow and are attached to my report. And I think the lastly is just the extent of the financial impact for the building department is yet to be fully realized. It will be dependent on the future of the program. I think that captures the intent of the report and what we're trying to capture in the bylaw. And if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. So this is just updating the bylaw to reflect the decision that council made last meeting.
Correct.
Thank you. Council, any questions of staff? What would you like to do? Councilor Watt?
Oh, excuse me, sorry, motion to follow recommendation, three number.
Okay, and it looks like Councilor Bourgeois is seconding that. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. On to item 10.4, the library building roof replacement, and that's coming from the clerk's office. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the township has an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the library, which sets out the various responsibilities for the township and the library board in regards to the building that the library operates from and other matters. Township staff have been alerted by library staff that there's an occasional leak in the library foyer. Library staff discovered this back in March of 2024. They tried to mitigate the leak in various ways. And they've also contacted various roofing companies to learn more about what can be done. The leak has become severe enough that they now need to, the roofing contractor appraised the entire roof and it's past its lifespan, so the whole roof needs to be repaired. So through that MOU, we are able to do that for them, but it hasn't been budgeted. There is a capital reserve for library repairs, and it currently has $27,400 in it. This repair would be between $14,500 and $14,650 plus HST. So I'm bringing this to council's attention as we are not able to move forward on this without council's approval to remove those funds from the reserve.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Any questions?
I got one question now. Are they going to be, this is for shingles, right, not now?
Through you, Madam Mayor, this is for a shingle roof. They'll also be placing ice and water shield and new plywood, because that's substandard right now.
Well, I just follow up to the chair. I wonder, is it worth looking at now? I know it's only maybe twice as much, but it's going to last forever. Just wonder if they look at that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I don't believe the library staff looked at that. They did have multiple roofing contractors come through. Out of the contractors they spoke to, only 2 submitted quotes, and they were both for shingle roofs. Deputy Mayor Nelson?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I have to agree with Ray on this, as far as it's more, but with the life of shingles anymore, like even going by 26-year shingles and they last 12 years. And that's pretty sad. I think for the amount of money that we're spending on this to put a roof on, I think I'd ask them if they could, or we put a max on it and ask for a steel roof, not to hold it up. We don't want it to cause damage of more water damage going into the building, but I agree with you wholeheartedly on that, Ray. I think it's, you don't get the life out of these shingles that we get anymore. Like I say, that once you can, I even had people, go back for warranty work and they just laugh at you. They don't care. And unfortunately, my last roof that I put on my house, I got 12 years out of it and it was done. And I said, no more again. I put steel on it. So my comments.
Just for a point of clarification, and I skimmed through the MOU that was attached to the agenda package. Madam Clerk, can you remind me so the municipality owns the building. The reserves are their reserves that pay for the maintenance of the building under the lease agreement, basically, right? That it's leaseholds for them. Their budget is provincially, or like they're on their own separate budget. And so what's like, I'm just trying to understand what our role is as the building owners and then as tenants and their budget as it relates to, they have their own standalone budget and run their operations as a, so could you just refresh me on that, please?
Sure. I may rely on Paul to fill in the financial details. But yes, the library board is an independent board that operates the library and library services. They hire their own staff. They can set their own policies. They mirror many of our policies, but they are their own independent item and function. They need to come to the township because the council approves the budget, but only the full amount of the budget. Council doesn't approve the line items in the budget. That's outside of council's purview. And then in our memorandum, in section 8, it says a library operating reserve will be established under the control of the library board and may be used to cover any potential future library deficits or future council-approved library needs. The reserve will not exceed $20,000. A library capital reserve will also be established under the control of the township and may be used to cover potential future capital expenses. A capital expense is considered to be anything over $5,000.
Thank you for that. I see your hand up. I have a question for Councillor Watt, actually, just as our member on the library board. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious, over the years, there has been conversation about the size of the building and a hope of moving at some point in the future. In recent years, the last couple, is that still topical or?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it does come up in conversation at the library. And we've talked about, there was talk about moving down to the arena one time. There was talk about a new building one time. There was talk, there's been all talk around, but nothing concrete has ever come up with it. I think number one, location is a really good thing, especially for the amount of kids that use the Douro school. It's a great location for that. So, but there's a way of expanding it somehow, whatever, it would probably be something in the future that would be looked at. But, I know we have talked about it, but I don't see moving in the near future, to be quite honest with you. As far as the repairs are gonna go, and I do agree, I did myself to a steel roof because I thought shingles just don't last anymore, the way they should, but it is quite substantially more money. So that would bring up another question. If we've only got a certain amount in our reserves and it's gonna be a lot more money to do steel, we have to authorize something for the extra money to go back to these contractors. Maybe they don't do steel either. It's hard to say. I went for a year and a half trying to get somebody just to do my roof. It's not easy these days. So, But yeah, moving, I don't think is in the works as much as they'd like to. I don't think it's in the works in the next couple of years, that's for sure, but it is one of our buildings that we still have to make sure that we maintain it because it will be repurposed for something else if when the library doesn't.
Do you know, Counselor, if the roof was discussed at a board meeting and like the option of steel was discussed? If you, like you're sitting at that table, if you know, as a proponent of putting on a steel roof, is that something that even came up in conversation?
Vaguely, yes, it did come up to, you know, well, let's look into it if there's any contractors available, to do it. Main thing was just get it done in a hurry because, you know, and maybe they thought they could just do part of it just to stop this leak, whatever, but now that we know the whole roof needs to be done, maybe that's the time to step up and do the whole thing properly and make it last for the next 50 years, and like that, rather than Councilor Johnson and Deputy Mayor Nelson say 10 years if you're lucky, kind of that. The cost savings down the road is substantial.
Thank you for that clarification, Councilor White. I appreciate that. Your insight being on the board. Deputy Mayor Nelson, and then I see Councilor Report, your hands up.
I'd like to make a motion that, we go back to pretty quickly if we can. And maybe we could decide this at, our committee of the whole. Or if that's possible, no?
Madam Mayor, it would not be possible. The committee of the whole only makes recommendations to council, not decisions, so we still have to come back in August, which would prolong the damage.
So is that a motion or no? Or just like.
I'll still make a
Okay.
motion. Pardon? Put it out for tender.
Through Madam Mayor, if I may.
And so we have a motion to go to tender. Councilor Johnson, was that you seconding it? Okay, so now we can discuss it procedurally. Councilor Rohr.
Through Mayor Watson, I would like to make a proposal on this motion that we request library staff and anyone else who needs to be involved with the tender to go out as soon as possible for metal roof, and then council sit for a special council meeting to approve whichever option we're going to go with, whether it be a shingle roof or metal roof.
So just to be clear, you're basically supporting this, but saying bring it back as quickly as possible, and we'll sit as a special council meeting to address the issue. Are you comfortable with that, Councilor Deputy Mayor Nelson, as an amendment to the motion, and Councilor Johnson? Okay. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, do you have that? Okay. Any discussion on the motion, Councilor Watt?
Agree, Madam Mayor. Yes, and if, I know that they did have a hard time, I know our CAO of the library was having a hard time getting anybody to come and look at it first. You know, it has taken quite a while to even get a couple of holes on it. So if we're really stuck in a hole, we've got to get this thing done somehow, and we don't get any replies back for doing steel. We just leave it at the option of, and just ask the council to leave it at the option of doing the shingles and maybe another 10 years and address this for 10 years and try to steel. It's just a curiosity.
I mean, I think if they can personally, and we're just speaking to the motion that's on the floor, I hear you, right? If they can't get anybody to come in and quote on the field, then the same request stands, and we have a special emergency council meeting and discuss that at that time, so that we're not tying their hands, right? I think that, you know, we all acknowledge, everybody recognizes that the roof needs to be replaced, and, you know, the council feels that we want to have entertain a price for a steel roof as a long-term option, then, and we can't get one, then we'll deal with that at that point in time. All right, any more discussion on the motion? All in favor? That motion carries, thank you. Where are we here? Item 10.5, energy conservation and demand management plan update 2024, CAO. CAO, Madam Clerk, I was gonna call you. Martina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report is regarding the township's conservation and demand management plan. This is an update for 2024. The Ontario Regulation 2523 broader public sector energy report conservation and demand management plans requires that municipalities have a energy conservation and demand management plan and to have them updated every 5 years. In 2019, the township contracted Greenview Environmental Management to create a new plan for the township as the previous plan had expired that year. There is background information attached to this report about that. Under the override referenced above, the township needs to update its plan this year. Staff have reviewed the existing plan, which is attached, and find that its goals and recommendations set out in the plan are still relevant to the township. Each township building falls under the regulations and are listed, and the analysis are analyzed in the document, along with action items to reduce the building's energy consumption when capital improvements are made. Staff are recommending that we extend this plan until 2029, with the caveat that council may choose to update the plan at an earlier date. The cost to totally review this plan could be large, and we have not gone up to RFP to see what that looks like. So this is a good option for us to ensure we're meeting our targets, but allow council to investigate this further if that's their wish.
Thank you very much. Questions from council? Councilor Johnston?
Through the chair, I'm going to make a motion to follow the recommendation, and we can extend this to year 2029. And in the meantime, if we want to look at the plan, that time, we'll do that. But right now, we can extend it to 2029. Is there a cost? How much would it cost us to do that? And then,
Through you, Madam Mayor, to do the extension, it will just be some staff time to update the charts in the document and then republish it on our website.
Recommendation. My motion is to receive it when you got here, and then follow the recommendation.
Councilor Report?
May I second that, please?
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. On to item 11, there's no committee reports, so we're into item 12, correspondence and action items. We have a number of items, and they are action items, so we're gonna go down them one by one. So item 12.1, we have letters regarding Douro-Dummer septic reinspection program. There's 4 letters as part of that. Council, what would you like to do?
I'd like to make a motion to receive.
Okay, second.
I'll make a second.
Okay, all in favor? That motion carries. Item 12.2, Douro-Dummer locals reports regarding June 4th, 2024 staff report of the septic reinspection program and building bylaw 21-74. Councilor report.
Motion to receive.
Seconded. Councilor Watt, all in favor? That motion carries. 12.3, Association of Ontario Road Supervisors, AO's invitation regarding the provincial truck rodeo competition. Rodeo, my favorite. Councilor Watt.
I'm gonna make a motion to receive and support, and because it's in our township this year in our Bureau Arena, and show an option out there for mayor, deputy mayor, councilor to participate like they did in other years.
What, we can do that?
They did other years. You drive a plow?
I got that. I figured it. That's cool.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Nelson seconded, all in favor? Oh, Councilor Johnson.
Yeah, are they not looking for some finances too?
Not for the rodeo.
To the chair. Are they not looking for some finances, or they just want to receive it that they're having it in the township? Yep. That's it?
Just that.
Still, okay.
All in favor? That motion carries. 12.4, Privilege First Nation 2024 Privilege Powwow sponsorship request. That might be the one that you were thinking of, Councilor Johnson, where somebody has a financial request. Deputy Mayor Nelson,
I'll move to receive.
seconded by Councilor Watt. All in favor? That motion carries. 12.5, Municipality of Calendar Resolution. Davison?
Maybe red mind speaking on it for a little bit, just before we
Oh, okay.
vote there. Like they're asking for some financial support if they can get it in different ways, different levels. Did we look at anything at all that we want to, be interested in? I'm not looking to, donate a lot of money. But on the other hand, there maybe there's something we could, all the different options they give us, maybe something we could, offer to it. My comment.
It's a fair comment. The motion is already passed, so we would probably have to do a motion to reconsider.
You, Madam Mayor, you could just pass the second motion, because the first motion was only to receive. There was no
Oh,
direction.
right, okay.
So you could pass a motion.
Yep, okay.
To do something else if you so wish.
So there's that. Do we have any money left in the sponsorship, grant budget allocation, Mr. Kramer?
Through you, Madam Mayor. It's, I would say, it's tough to answer after the last meeting where I was given direction to find money. And I was going to be bringing that back just to the August meeting. So there was an expense approved at the last meeting that was greater than the balance remaining in that account. But at the same time, it hasn't officially been approved to be taken from that account. So I think for the purpose of the program, there has been more funds spent than the original budget.
So what would you like to do, Council?
To the chair, I'd like to make a motion that we donate $300, and the business logo will be the township of Douro.
Sorry, I'm just pulling up the proposal. That was one of the override logo, I see. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Councilor Report.
I'll second that, please.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? That motion carries. On to item 12.5, the municipality of calendar resolution regarding promptly renaming the assessment, resuming the assessment cycle. Councilor Report.
I'd like to make a motion to receive and support.
Anyone would like to second that?
I'll send it to the chair.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? That motion carries. Township of Wainfleet, resolution regarding increased funding to libraries and museums in Ontario. I believe Selwyn Township had a similar resolution forward on this. It's just for books. I think the money that we received for our library is around $14,000, and that never hasn't changed in like a decade. Yeah. Councilor Watt.
To give support, I know we've already discussed it. I'd like to see that sooner or later.
Councilor Report.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. Okay, on to bylaws. 13.1 is bylaw 2024-35. This is the comprehensive zoning bylaw from the earlier planning meeting that we had. Deputy Mayor Nelson,
Also make that motion there.
seconded by Councilor Report. All in favor? That motion carries. And then 13.2 is bylaw 2024-36, which is the building bylaw amendment that was raised. Councilor Watt, seconded by Councilor Report. All in favor? That motion also carries. There's no reports from notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Any announcements? Councilor Watt.
Remember, July 1st parade coming up pretty soon, so there's a website, I believe now, and looking forward to a big turnout for that. So
And I believe they're still looking for people to enter.
I believe so. Hope be down.
Awesome. Any other announcements? Nope. So we have a closed session on it. This is a little different for us. We've only done this a couple of times. We're actually just approving the closed session minutes. So to do that, we don't need to go into closed session. However, if council wants to discuss any of the items or the minutes, that we would be in theory approving, then we would need to go into close. Am I getting that right, Madam Clerk? Yes. So is there anything that we do, council wants to discuss in close about, like, on those closed minutes, to approve those closed minutes? And if not, then simply a motion to receive and approve those minutes. Councilor
Chair
Whitmore?
Mayor Watson, I'll make the motion to receive and approve.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson. All in favor? That motion carries. And just a confirming bylaw, right? Councilor Watt, Councilor Report, all in favor? That carries. Our next meeting, we have a committee of the whole meeting on June 25th. Make note that we may be looking at upping the start time a little bit earlier from 10 o'clock to 9:30, but that's still to be confirmed. And the staff soiree afterwards, and then a regular council meeting on August 6th, unless we do some motion to adjourn. Deputy Mayor Nelson, Councilor Johnston, all in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone.